This is a leader within the Jehovah's Witness religion. He's right under the governing body. Jehovah's Witnesses are holding their annual district convention right now, and they just released a bunch of propaganda videos from it where they talk about how evil the world is and how you can't know true love without being a Jehovah's Witness. It gets weird. So I figured we'd watch through it and see how they twist reality around to fit their weird little narrative. This is part 2, but it stands independent of the rest. You don't have to see the other parts to understand what's happening. If there's missing context, I'll explain it. Anyways, let's give it a watch and see what they have to say.
How is peace related to love? How can we show love? And what blessings result when we do? The first symposium of this convention will answer those questions. Brother Seth Hyatt, a helper to the service committee of the governing body, will begin with the talk, How Love Leads to Genuine Peace, Love for God.
How love leads to genuine peace, love for God. Okay, I don't know why they put love for God at the end of the title. That's kind of weird, but all right. Let's hear it.
What do you think? Is there a connection, a relationship between love and peace? And if so...
God, they're so weird, aren't they? Just like their personalities, the way that they talk and move and everything. It's just so strange, man. It is so deeply odd.
And if so, what role does love play in achieving genuine peace? Well, the Bible helps us to appreciate that love is an essential element in achieving genuine peace.
In the section that we moved past a minute ago, Kenneth Cook, I think, I believe he's one of the governing body members. You saw him in one of the videos a minute ago, but he says that we should love who Jehovah loves and hate who Jehovah hates.
We need to get to know Jehovah as a person and admire his qualities and ways. Then we can love what he loves and hate what he hates.
Wow, that's an interesting statement, isn't it? I'm fascinated. Why does Jehovah hate anybody? Didn't Jehovah create these people? Why does he hate his own creations like this? This is so disturbing. They had absolutely no control over how they turned out. And here we are with the Creator blaming them for how they're created. It's so deeply wrong, and I feel like they don't get it. Like the dots have not connected for them.
So we're interested in showing love. As students of the Bible, we know that humans were created in the image of God, and as a result, you and I have the ability to show love. But we also know that we live in a world that has a very distorted view and definition of love. That combined with our own...
Isn't that funny? That's hilarious. The world has a distorted view of what love is. Says the group who believes that if somebody doesn't think the same way as you religiously, you should cut them off and never speak to them again for the rest of your life. Yeah, the world is the one with the distorted view of love. Absolutely. That checks out. Totally, man.
Imperfection means that if we're not careful, our view of love can become distorted. So how do we guard against that? By allowing Jehovah to teach us how to love. And when you think about it, what better teacher could we have? The Bible says that God is love. That means that Jehovah, our Creator, who knows us better than we know ourselves.
This guy, it sounds like he's about to cry or something. Like, why is he talking this way? This is so weird.
Who embodies, who personifies love, is willing to teach us how to love.
Let me tell you this. Here's the thing. What's this guy's name? I don't know this guy's name. Anyways, here's the thing. Cults are famous for, okay, there's something called, we have the bite model and we have the influence continuum. This is the influence continuum for individuals, for leaders, for organizations. There is constructive influence and there's destructive influence, okay? This is one of the models we use to determine if something is a cult or not. The other one is the bite model. On an individual level, destructive influence includes conditional love, built on the condition that you believe the same way that they do, or that you follow their instructions, or any number of other things. If you don't do these things, then they won't love you anymore. And that is exactly the type of love that we see from Jehovah's Witnesses. If you don't agree with us on this, if you don't follow our instructions, if you don't stay a member of the religion, your friends and family will abandon you for the rest of your life. That's conditional love, and it's a hallmark of a cult. Building your personality off of hate rather than compassion, encouraging people to follow doctrine rather than following their conscience, inspiring solemnity, fear, and guilt in people rather than creativity and humor, or dependency and obedience rather than free will and critical thinking. On an individual level, that's destructive influence versus constructive influence, right? That's exactly what we see the Jehovah's Witness organization encouraging their members or mandating their members to do. Those things on that list: dependency and obedience, solemnity, fear, and guilt, building everything off of doctrine rather than conscience, inspiring hate, building everything off conditional love, and programming in a false cult identity. On the leadership level, the leaders tend to be narcissistic or psychopathic, and psychopathic here has a different connotation or a different meaning than what you would, than the colloquial meaning. Psychopathic means an inability to feel empathy for others in this context, basically. Don't really care what these people think or feel or what they're suffering from or anything. As long as they're following instructions, then you're happy. That's basically what this model means when it says narcissistic or psychopathic. Elitist / grandiose, power-hungry, secretive or deceptive, or claims absolute authority, versus the constructive side of influence for leaders, which includes psychologically healthy, knows its own limits, empowers individuals, trustworthy, and accountable. Jehovah's Witnesses do claim absolute authority. They claim to be the mouthpieces for God on earth. Everything about Jehovah's Witnesses matches up with this influence continuum in disturbing ways. And then on an organizational level, we've got the constructive influence organizations will exhibit include egalitarianism, checks and balances, informed consent, individuality and diversity, means create an end, encourages growth, and people are free to leave if they choose. The destructive side of organizations believe in elitism, which absolutely describes Jehovah's Witnesses organization to a T. Authoritarian structure, there is no way to counterbalance. If something goes wrong, it just goes wrong, period. If there's a corrupt member or corrupt leader, there's just a corrupt leader. There's no way to fix that. Deceptive and manipulative, they create clones of people rather than encouraging individuality and diversity. Tell me you haven't seen the clone personality coming through in what we've been watching up to now. Ends justify the means mentality rather than a means create an end mentality. That's a hallmark of extremism. Preserves its own power rather than encouraging growth. And there are no legitimate reasons to leave versus people are free to leave. You know, I was a member of a music club in high school at one point. I went to this music club and I played the guitar with a couple of friends. And one day I just decided that I didn't want to be a part of it anymore, so I just stopped going. Boom, just like that. People didn't stop talking to me. People didn't shame me. They didn't, let's see, I'm just looking through the list here. They didn't hate me. They didn't guilt me into coming back. They didn't try to make me dependent and obedient to them. None of that, because it wasn't a cult. That's the difference between destructive influence and constructive influence. destructive cults use destructive influence. And that is exactly what Jehovah's Witnesses are all about. That's what it is all about with these people. So they have a warped view of love. They have a warped view of what love should be. Objectively, we can look at this list and see the fucked up things that Jehovah's Witnesses do and the way they warp and twist love out of proportion. With that in mind, let's listen to this guy tell us how the world doesn't know what true love is.
Bodies, who personifies love, is willing to teach us how to love. And how does he do that? Well, by means of his word, the Bible, and by means of his own beautiful example. As we get acquainted with Jehovah, we learn what love really is. And as we put that love to work, as Jesus did, then we're in a position to enjoy genuine peace. In this symposium, we're going to explore how love for God, love of neighbor, and love for God's Word, the Bible, can lead to genuine peace. First, let's talk about love for God. How important is that if we want to enjoy genuine peace?
How important is love for God if we want to enjoy genuine peace? Is that what he said? Okay.
Well, Jesus provides some insight in a statement he made that's recorded in our Bibles at Matthew chapter 22. Let's look at it. Matthew chapter 22, and we're going to read verse 37. Now, to provide some context for these words, Jesus has been asked a question by a man who is well versed in the law. What is the greatest commandment in the law? Notice how Jesus responds. He said to him, "You must love Jehovah your God with your whole heart and with your whole soul."
Yeah, this is, I believe, considered to be like part of the new commandments, basically. Like when Jesus came back, he abolished the 10 commandments, or actually not just the 10 commandments. He abolished the old law, which is actually 613 commandments, I think. It included all kinds of crazy stuff, like don't eat shellfish, don't eat pork, so on and so forth. And he replaced those with the new laws, which one of them was, this is my understanding of it, one of them was love God with your whole heart, body, soul, mind, strength, and whatever else you've got in you. That was one of them. Now, the other one was love your neighbor as yourself, basically. That's my understanding. He replaced the old laws with those two new ones. Or that's what I was told when I was little. If that's not how other religious groups believe, then it's certainly how Jehovah's Witnesses view things. So take that for what you will.
And with your whole mind. This is the greatest and first commandment. You must love Jehovah your God. A command.
Yeah, that's a great way to get somebody to love somebody else. Command them to. Perfect, right?
Love for Jehovah is essential. It has to be the most important relationship in our life, more important than any human, more important than anything. We want to love Jehovah. To what extent? Well, Jesus says, with your whole heart. Now, what does that involve?
That involves abandoning your children, abandoning your friends and family, because that's what the governing body told you to do.
The context of Jesus' words helps us to understand that he was talking about a person's feelings, emotions, desires. So does love for God involve our emotions? Absolutely. But it has to involve more than a simple affection for God. Why do we say that? Well, what did Jesus say next? with your whole soul. That is, with your entire being. We use everything we have to praise Jehovah and to prove our love for him. But even more is involved. Jesus concludes by saying, with your whole mind. So our intellectual faculties are involved. We're willing to take the time to get to know Jehovah's thinking and make it our thinking. We want to think the way Jehovah thinks. We want to understand his purpose and his requirements for us. And we want to understand his personality.
And you're the one that can tell us about his requirements and personality, right? Because you have a direct line to him. Is that right?
Now, when we think about that kind of love, it's clear that it encompasses our thoughts, our words, and our actions. Nothing is left out. And that kind of love provides a basis for a friendship with God. And that results in peace with God. So there we see the progression. Loving Jehovah with our whole heart, soul, and mind leads to peace with God. And as we enjoy peace with God, we can also enjoy inner peace and peace with those around us. Now, how does that work?
Only enjoy peace with the people around us if they also believe the way that we do, though, right? If they don't believe the way that we do, we shouldn't be communicating with them in this guy's eyes.
Well, our love for Jehovah motivates us to imitate him, and we cultivate the qualities that Jehovah displays. For example, patience, kindness.
He's listing the fruitages of the Holy Spirit.
Mildness.
Oh, that one's not.
Qualities that make us attractive to others, and qualities that promote peace with others. I'm sure you would agree that we want to be at peace with God.
I want to be at peace with your mom.
But sometimes our peace can be threatened. We may experience pressure. We may be the subject of some wrong, some injustice, some evil that threatens our peace. And then the question is, will we handle things in a way that is pleasing to Jehovah? Or will we become impatient or try to take matters into our own hands? In the following dramatization, notice how a family draws strength from a Bible account that highlights love and respect for Jehovah's sovereignty.
Okay, it sounds like they're about to give us a drama, so let me explain. When I was a kid, they didn't have this whole like media apparatus that they have today, right? But Jehovah's Witnesses have honestly always used technology to further their goals and further their reach since day one. I mean, the founder, Charles Taze Russell, was even going out there with a sound car, famously. It had a gigantic sound car. And this sound car had a big phonograph on it, a huge phonograph horn. And the phonograph was playing like a recorded message to people. Bowser, get over here. Get under the icicles. Under the icicles, Bowser. What are you doing? When I was little, they would hold these, what they called dramas. They would be like plays on stage, but it would all be pre-recorded. So the actors weren't actually speaking at all. It was just a pre-recorded like voice actor that planned out everything that was going to be said already. And of course, you know, you got 10,000 people in this big stadium or civic center or whatever. So it would just be like actors walking around in garb and pretending to talk when the voice part came on. Jehovah's Witnesses have always used media and propaganda to their advantage since day one. Now, since I've left, they stopped doing the dramas, like where they had actors on stage and stuff, and they started using videos like we're about to see here. So this is the drama portion of the convention. They didn't have like live actors, or they don't have live actors do it anymore. I guess they just have they just have videos. They have propaganda videos that they push now. So let's see what the propaganda video has for us here. Oh, please don't tell me. Is this a music video? Oh my God. No, it's not. Okay. All right, let's keep listening.
Olivia! Olivia! Hurry, you're gonna be late for school.
Thank you.
Okay, Mom, I'm going to preach.
See you.
So Olivia's going to school, and her brother, I guess, is going to preach, going out door knocking or whatever.
Bye, Mom. Love you.
Have a good day.
All these people are Jehovah's Witnesses, by the by. Every single person you see in any of these videos, they are all Jehovah's Witnesses.
See you later, Mom.
Today's poll, would she ever? She would never. She's an angel. I think it's all of her. You know she's wild. She
Apparently, they are taking a video of her, and she doesn't like that very much.
Okay, I'm totally posting that. Do it. Okay, it's up. You just got Hey everyone, Brooke here, and Amanda. Guess who just walked in? Olivia. And there's Jake. Today's poll, would she ever? No, she would never. She's an angel.
Okay.
I think it's all an act. You know she's wild. Oh, she saw it. She saw it.
I can't believe
So basically being harassed at school, all right? Yeah, that's pretty common for Jehovah's Witnesses. They're not treated well in school very often. Yeah, and this is extremely corny, absolutely.
I don't even think she likes guys.
What if she's into girls?
Everybody's.
That was truly offensive to a Jehovah's Witness. I don't think she even likes guys. Maybe she likes girls. That is a deeply offensive thing for a Jehovah's Witness to hear. I mean, it's a normal thing to hear, obviously, like... are they gay? Just asking a question. I don't know. But no, this is deeply offensive to Jehovah's Witnesses because being gay is morally wrong in their eyes.
Getting it.
Wow, I hole-in-one that. Did you see that? I jumped right in between the two Goombas. That's messed up, man.
Everybody's getting it.
I bet she's still a virgin.
Honestly, I don't remember any discussions about that in high school. Nobody cared because most people weren't anymore. They were just doing their thing, whatever. And at that point, like, why do you care if somebody else is a virgin or not? Like, you really don't. I don't know. I guess that's a little overblown. Maybe it's not. Maybe other people dealt with that in different schools. That just wasn't really the type of thing I heard in my school. I heard it in middle school, but not in high school.
Hey, can I see that?
Yeah, of course. Here you go.
Oh, okay. And here's the brother who is doing the whole cart witnessing thing, right? Standing at a cart, like, trying to cram his stuff down people's throats, right?
Enjoy life forever. Now, how are you going to do that?
Well, that's a very good question, actually. Well, God promises...
No, not God, you. What are you doing?
Me? Well, I try to help others.
Try? Man, all you do is stand next to your little cart while the rest of us stand up for your rights, bro.
Yeah, this really is not that common. Most people, when they see Jehovah's Witnesses on the street, they won't normally harass them about being politically neutral or whatever. Usually they will get in theological debates with them, or they'll just leave them alone. Honestly, I was never harassed, ever, not one single time as a Jehovah's Witness for being politically neutral as a kid. Never happened. I mean, and I was a Jehovah's Witness for 18 years, and I really put myself out there. It's just not common, I don't think. I'm sure it happens, but yeah, not very often.
Well, I'm actually neutral.
Neutral? Ain't no neutral. You're just a coward.
Yeah, this really does not happen.
Take your trash.
How'd it go?
It was a tough day at the car, but...
Yeah, Jehovah's Witnesses are obsessed with being persecuted. They have to feel like they're persecuted 24/7. It's sad and embarrassing. Jehovah's Witnesses are on the low end of persecuted. Like, they really are not that persecuted nearly at all compared to other religious groups, or compared to other religious groups, and also compared to other people. LGBT people are significantly more persecuted than Jehovah's Witnesses, and as a matter of fact, Jehovah's Witnesses are the ones engaging in the persecution against them.
I'm okay.
You know, if you're one of the people persecuting others, I feel like you have that much less of a right to complain about being persecuted.
Brooke here, and Amanda. Guess who just walked in?
Olivia? What's wrong?
Do you guys see that shot from downtown? He sniped me with that hammer.
Hey everyone, Brooke here, and Amanda. Guess who just walked in? Olivia. And there's Jake. Today's poll, would she ever? No, she wouldn't.
You know, it feels like they're crying here because they're being persecuted for their religious faith, when in reality, it's just a couple of shitheads. Everybody in school deals with this. Everybody. You think there's a single person out there who doesn't deal with this kind of harassment from, like, classmates or whatever? You are living in a delusional fantasy land if you think that this doesn't happen to everybody. Happens constantly. This isn't because you're a Jehovah's Witness.
Never, she's an angel. I think it's all an act. You know she's wild. Oh, she saw it.
I'm so sorry that happened to you. You know, it reminds me of a situation Paul was in.
Wait, how old was Paul, I'm wondering? Hang on, just out of curiosity. Looks like it can be inferred that Paul was roughly the same age as Jesus. So when all the shenaniganery was going on in the Bible, he was probably like 18 in the early days. And then the Bible accounts are from when Paul was in his 20s, basically. So this is probably an inaccurate depiction. This guy looks like he's in his 50s. No. Paul was not in his 50s when the Bible accounts were taking place. He was in his early 20s, I would say. Yeah, this happened to Paul. Paul got called a slut? Lol. Right, exactly, yeah.
I think it was Acts chapter 16 and verse 23. After they had inflicted many blows on them, they threw them into prison.
Actually, give me a second here. 57:24. I want to write some of these down. Hang on. Jehovah's Witnesses misinterpret normal bullying for religious persecution. I mean, this is a perfect example of Jehovah's Witnesses turning everything into religious persecution. Every single thing that happens in their life. It's because I'm a Jehovah's Witness, you know? In reality, there are just shitheads out there. That's just what it is. I don't like it either. I would love it if there were fewer shitheads, but there aren't. It's not because you're a Jehovah's Witness all the time. And sometimes it is, certainly, because you act like a little weirdo. Sometimes it's just regular bullies, man.
After they had inflicted many blows on them, they threw them into prison and ordered the jailer to guard them securely. Because he got such an order, he threw them into the inner prison and fasted.
I think what they're referring to right now is the exact thing that they mentioned earlier. Who was it? Kenneth Cook or Stephen Lett or somebody quoted this verse earlier about Paul and the other guy, Silas, maybe, being thrown into a prison or whatever else. So, yeah.
And their feet in the stocks. But about the middle of the night, Paul and Silas were praying and praising God with song, and the prisoners were listening to them. What do you think made them want to sing?
Your mom.
They loved Jehovah. And when they focused on that, how do you think they felt?
I think they felt some peace.
That's right. How about we dig a little bit deeper?
Okay, so this was... I thought she was talking to the chick about being called a slut, right? And I couldn't figure out how that related to Paul. I guess she was actually talking about... I guess she's actually talking to the dude, right? I mean, she's talking to her son, who was being harassed for being politically neutral, right?
Okay.
Look, here's the thing about, like, Jehovah's Witnesses being politically neutral or whatever. If that's what they want to do, fine. Like, I don't care if they want to be politically neutral, whatever. It doesn't bother me. Go nuts. I think it's kind of ridiculous for them to not pay attention to what's happening in the world and try to prevent the bad stuff from taking place. But, you know, if that's what you want to do, far be it for me to stop you, I guess. Jehovah's Witnesses are honestly ready to go down with the ship. I've talked about this before, but they have sleeper cells that are basically like designed to, when the world comes to an end, these sleeper cells will like kick into action and like create a mock government, a temporary mock government for the Jehovah's Witnesses, basically. So yeah, Jehovah's Witnesses, they're ready. They are ready for the end. And they're totally 100% prepared to go down with the ship. So if they are willing to let this government fall, in fact, if they're expecting it as they are, okay. I mean, if you want to be politically neutral because you think the world is coming to an end, then whatever.
Well, what did you notice? Gabe and Olivia are under pressure. Olivia in the classroom, Gabe at the witnessing cart. How will they handle the pressure? In a way that preserves their peace with Jehovah? Well, it's a good question. And really, all of us need to reflect on that question when we're under pressure.
So when you believe that you're being persecuted for being a Jehovah's Witness, how are you going to react? That's the question, I guess, right?
We know that Jehovah's way is the best way. We're convinced that his way of ruling is the best way. But when we're subjected to pressure, perhaps the victim of some injustice or even of some evil,
they really do have a victim complex.
We may be inclined to take matters into our own hands. And when we do, it can jeopardize our peace. So how do we demonstrate respect for Jehovah's sovereignty? The inspired advice in Romans chapter 12 can help. Let's look together at Romans chapter 12, beginning in verse 17. Return evil for evil to no one. So this provides the context for what follows. We may suffer some evil. Return evil for evil to no one. Take into consideration what is fine from the viewpoint of all men.
So that's interesting because I specifically remember the Bible verse about, you know, taking an eye for an eye or whatever. If somebody wrongs you, then they have to pay for their crimes or whatever. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, so on and so forth. And now we have this verse here that he has selectively picked out that completely contradicts that. Don't go eye for an eye. Just leave it be, right? Turn the other cheek. See, this is the fundamental difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament. It's almost like they're two different gods. Like, oh, shoot. I thought I was in NSMBU, not 3D World. So I tried to spin jump on him. This is the fundamental difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament. The New Testament and Jesus generally is a lot more peace, love, and don't hate anybody for anything, you know? But when it's convenient, religious groups, Jehovah's Witnesses included, will ignore the New Testament advice and go with the Old Testament advice, which is almost always more hateful. Really interesting to me that they decided to pick out the New Testament verse about not hating anybody for anything in this one very specific circumstance. Turn the other cheek. Well, interestingly enough, they ignore the New Testament and just go with the Old Testament when it comes to, like, LGBT rights, for example. How about that?
For evil to no one. Take into consideration what is fine from the viewpoint of all men. And then notice verse 18. If possible, as far as it depends on you, be peaceable. Be a peacemaker with all men. Now, these words really heighten our appreciation for Jehovah's reasonableness.
Yeah, I don't know where you got Jehovah and reasonable, but that's not the case at all in any way, shape, or form. Jehovah is notoriously vengeful and hateful and jealous.
Why do we say that? Because Jehovah doesn't ask us to do something that we can't do. He doesn't ask us to control others. No. To the extent it depends on you.
He doesn't ask us to control others? Is that what he just said? I don't know about that. That's weird. That's a weird thing for this guy to have said, because that is exactly what Jehovah's Witnesses do. Let me just step back and write that down.
Do. He doesn't ask us to control others.
Okay, 1 hour, 48 seconds, roughly. I get that he was saying Jehovah doesn't ask us to, control the kids to prevent them from being mean to me or whatever. But That was a little bit on the nose. It was just a little on the nose for me.
No. To the extent it depends on you. Jehovah asks that each of us control ourselves, our response to a situation, and to be peacemakers. And then an explanation. Verse 19, do not avenge yourselves, beloved, but yield place to the wrath. Why? For it is written, vengeance is mine. I will repay, says Jehovah.
So don't worry about getting revenge on these people. Jehovah is going to get revenge on them, and they're all going to die a horrific death in Armageddon for mistreating you. That's the bottom line here, right?
Why? For it is written, vengeance is mine. I will repay, says Jehovah. So the advice is, be a peacemaker and leave wrath to God. Let him determine if and when and upon whom vengeance will be brought. It's easy to say, but is it always easy to do? No. The example of King David can be very helpful to us. Through no fault of his own, David became the target of King Saul's murderous hatred. And on several occasions, Saul tried to kill David. For several years, David lived as a fugitive, but there were opportunities during that time for David to harm Saul, even to kill him. Now, he could have justified that in his mind, but do you think, had he done so, it would have threatened his peace especially with Jehovah? We know that it would. So how did David respond? On one occasion, he said to his men, it is unthinkable from Jehovah's standpoint that I should do such a thing to my Lord, the anointed of Jehovah. What helped David? Well, he saw a bigger picture than David and Saul, didn't he? He saw a picture with David, Saul, and Jehovah. And he knew that if Saul needed to be corrected, Jehovah would do it in his time and way. As a result, David was willing to be patient, and he preserved his peace.
You may feel like it's hyperbolic for me to frame it this way, that they're not supposed to take vengeance on anybody. They're supposed to let Jehovah kill them in his own time. And you're supposed to sit there and wait for Jehovah to kill them. But that's not a hyperbolic framing. They really do sit there in anticipation, in excitement, waiting for people to die, to be killed by Jehovah. No hyperbole. They really do sit there thinking about the fact that these people are going to be killed in Armageddon. That is how they view this.
Peace with God, his inner peace, and his peace with those around him. What a beautiful example. And we can be sure that if we demonstrate our love for Jehovah by respecting his sovereignty, waiting on him, that we will enjoy peace as well. Jehovah assures us that he will bless his people. He will bless us with peace. So let us be determined to love Jehovah with our whole heart, soul, and mind, and to demonstrate our love for Jehovah by patiently waiting on him and respecting his sovereignty, his way of doing things.
David was a murderer and adulterer. Why do they always use him as an example? Good question. Donald Trump is just an awful person, an adulterer, doesn't exhibit any of the signs of the Holy Spirit, In no way, shape, or form is Donald Trump considered a religious person or the model for who religious people should aspire to be. But not Jehovah's Witnesses, but a lot of evangelical, like televangelist pastors believe that Donald Trump is like one of God's chosen people, like full-blown. They seem to think that Trump is like almost like a new Jesus, effectively. That's how they view Donald Trump. Makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, but that's how they view it. You know, it doesn't matter how little sense this makes for religious people. They will make it fit. They will make it make sense somehow. They don't care if there's a cognitive dissonance that has to come along with it. They'll just assert it anyways.
Doing things. If we do, we will enjoy the incomparable peace of God. Now, Brother Ralph Walholtz, a helper to the Personnel Committee, will present the next talk of this symposium. How love leads to genuine peace. Love of neighbor.
Oh, okay. I guess we've got another talk coming on then. Oh my God, this really sucks. God, I hated that. That was terrible. So yeah, I guess we got another talk. How love leads to genuine peace. Love of neighbor. Why the subtitle there? Like, why the subheading or whatever? It's just kind of weird to me. But okay.
Foretelling dominant traits that would exist in the last days, 2 Timothy chapter 3 says that men will be lovers of themselves. Is it wrong for us to love ourselves? No, it's normal, even necessary to have a healthy love of oneself. After all, Jesus said, you must love your neighbor as yourself. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. However, the love mentioned here is distorted and selfish. And because it prevents love of neighbor, it becomes a barrier to peace. Some Bible scholars suggest that Paul put love of self at the top of his list. That's 2 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 through 5, because all the remaining negative characteristics in the list result from it. And those traits, too, are a barrier to peace. For example, not being open to any agreement, mentioned in 2 Timothy chapter 3 and verse 3, often leads to anger, wrath, screaming, and abusive speech. Rather than bringing peace, such a lack of self-control stirs up strife. On the other hand, love of neighbor has the opposite effect. It leads to genuine peace. Please turn to Matthew chapter 22, verse 36. One of the Pharisees, versed in the law, tests Jesus. Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?
Right, they were trying to test Jesus. I remember this one. So the Pharisees were like a religious cult at the time, basically. And they were trying to test Jesus to see if he knew what he's talking about, or trying to get him in a little gotcha or whatever.
Jesus responded with the words in verse 37, just considered at length in the preceding talk. You must love Jehovah your God. But then Jesus goes beyond the original question and quotes a second commandment. Let's read verse 39. The second, like it, is this: you must love your neighbor as yourself.
Right, so this is Jehovah's Witnesses. This is my understanding of what, like, the new laws were, basically. Jesus was trying to change the new laws, abolish the old laws, and the new laws were love your neighbor as yourself and love God with your whole heart, whatever else, right? That's the whole bit here.
Jesus is saying that the two commandments, love of God and love of neighbor, are linked. Now, how exactly would you define neighbor? Please turn to Luke.
Other people. That's how I would define it. Other people. Cognitive dissonance is a hell of a drug, absolutely. The subheadings are because that's the format for symposiums. Okay, yeah, I guess that checks out. I'm just unfamiliar. It seemed weird to title something twice, basically, is what it seemed like, but Yeah. Oh, my God. I forgot to mention, this morning I took my wife to the train station. We were on the subway waiting. We're just sitting there, you know, doing our thing, whatever, bebopping along, waiting for the train to arrive at its stop. And somewhere near 57th Street, I think, this woman gets on the train and starts screaming about Jesus, screaming it. I mean, I have PTSD from my dad screaming, and that didn't help at all. Did not help. And I don't know. She was screaming about how Jesus loves people and we're filthy sinners. And then people get off at the next stop, which is usual. People get off at the next stop, and she starts yelling at them, yeah, you're getting off because you don't want to hear it. And I thought about getting in her face and saying, look, I'm just trying to ride the fucking train to get where I want to be. I don't need to hear you screaming about Jesus in my ear. When I say screaming, I don't mean she was speaking loudly so people could hear. I mean she was at the top of her lungs screaming in like a violent tone at people not following Jesus' commands and stuff. It was disturbing. And, you know, I wasn't really sure if she was mentally stable enough for me to approach. I worried she may have a knife or something, so I just left it alone. But I don't know. It just bothered me. It was a very uncomfortable experience. But that's part of the deal, you know, living in New York City. That's part of it, and I'll take it. I mean, it's stressful sometimes, very deeply stressful. Not a huge fan of that experience, but either way, I'm glad I live in New York City. I'll take it. But yeah, she was absolutely terrible. And honestly, I am less likely to become a Christian if I hear some nutcase on a train screaming like that. I am less likely to become a Christian. She thinks she's helping the cause. She's not. She is only damaging the cause. Honestly, she really is. And I thought about saying that to her. Like, you know, you're not helping anything, right? You're making this worse for yourself and your cause by screaming like a fucking psycho. But then I decided, you know, there's a non-zero possibility that she has a knife and she's going to stab me with it if I criticize her. So if I were to criticize her, though, I thought about it, and I figure what I'd do is probably quote 2 Timothy 2:12, which says women are supposed to be in subjugation to men and, you know, not teach them, not talk to them like from a place of authority or whatever. That should logically get her to stop trying to preach to me. But they're kind of selective about the verses they read, right? So.
Chapter 10. Notice how Jesus answered this very question, who really is my neighbor? Jesus responds clearly with his renowned illustration of the neighborly Samaritan.
Mr. Rogers, won't you be my neighbor?
In Jesus' day, the Jews disdained Samaritans. Their attitude moved Jesus to make a powerful point. In his illustration, Jesus said that the Samaritan took extraordinary measures to help a Jewish man. The Jew had fallen victim to robbers, and his own countrymen ignored him, leaving him half dead. What Jesus said must have stunned the audience. Luke chapter 10, verses 33 and 34 reads, "But a certain Samaritan, traveling the road, came upon him, and at seeing him, he was moved with pity. So he approached him and bandaged his wounds, pouring oil and wine on them. Then he mounted him on his own animal and brought him to an inn and took care of him."
So love your neighbor as yourself. That's what they're getting at, right? They're trying to say treat people well. I have to say, I feel like they're kind of missing the mark on that one based on how they treat non-Jehovah's Witnesses or disfellowship people. Just throwing it out there.
Jesus then asks a penetrating question in verse 36.
That's what she said.
Who of these three seems to you to have made himself neighbor? His words recorded in verse 37 are also directed to you and to me. Go and do the same yourself. Yes, our neighbors include not only our family members and our Christian brothers and sisters, but all whom we encounter from day to day.
Does that include disfellowshipped people? Or are you selective in who you consider neighbors?
In other words, our love extends to those who are not of our own race, tribe, nationality, or religion. How do we show that love?
The reason that they say that, the reason that they include people of other religions and things like that is because they want to bring people in. They want to prove how loving they are. They want to show people that they are loving and that they are God's people or whatever else by expressing love for outsiders. But if you think for a second that they actually respect outsiders, if you think that they would show love for people who've left the religion, you are mistaken. They fucking hate disfellowshipped people or people who disassociated, people who were once part of the religion but are no longer part of it. They are disgusted by it. Generally speaking, they're only loving to people who are outside the religion as a means to an end, to try to prove how great they are.
Please turn with me to Romans chapter 13. Because we love our neighbor, we avoid conduct that disrupts peace. Instead, we strive to apply the inspired counsel at Romans chapter 13, verses 8 through 10. Do not owe anything to anyone except to love one another. For whoever loves his fellow man has fulfilled the law. For the law code, you must not commit adultery, you must not murder, you must not steal, you must not covet, and whatever other commandment there is summed up in this saying, you must love your neighbor as yourself. Love does not work evil to one's neighbor. Therefore, love is the law's fulfillment.
Isn't this a funny thing to hear from Jehovah's Witnesses? A group that has mandated that my mom never speak to me again for the rest of my life. That is something else, huh?
That means that our responsibility is to treat others in ways that promote peace. When others treat us unkindly, we endeavor to imitate Jesus. When he was being insulted, he did not return the insult. When he was suffering, he didn't go threatening.
They've actually felt that way for a long time, Jehovah's Witnesses. Generally, they have believed that it's best to not retaliate against people since I was little. And that was kind of programmed into me. Don't retaliate. Just walk away. It's better to just walk away, generally. Although my parents did tell me if I was in a situation where I was being like physically attacked, then it's okay to fight back. Self-defense is acceptable. Now, I don't think Jehovah's Witnesses are big fans of the self-defense thing or whatever, but that's their position for the most part. Like, don't retaliate if at all possible. And I carried that out of the religion with me. Sometimes I get a little pissed off and I do retaliate against people, like on Twitter. I yell at them or whatever when they're being idiots. I try desperately not to do that. I try not to insult people, try not to hurt anybody. I just try to walk away for the most part, which leads to me blocking a lot of people. I'd rather block somebody than scream at somebody, especially since you could say that I am in a position of power, having a Twitter account with, tens of thousands of followers, when I criticize somebody, it's a bigger deal than when just some rando criticizes somebody, right? Like, I'm not a nobody on Twitter. I have influence on there. And for that reason, it's important for me to be respectful to everybody, even when they're not being respectful to me. And that's why I use the block button a lot. Rather than attack somebody or hurt somebody or bring a mob down on somebody, I'd rather just block them and let them go off into the corner and be pissed off to their heart's content, pretty much. That's my position. The elders made my mom take me out of Taekwondo when I was in elementary school. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. My uncle, well, he's dead now. He died like last year, I think, but he was very, very high up in Taekwondo. He was very knowledgeable about how it all operates, and I don't know. He ran his own studio and everything. He was very good at Taekwondo, and we weren't allowed to take classes in it or anything either for the same reason. Jehovah's Witnesses are weird about it, basically. Anyways, that's the end of part 2. In the next section, Jehovah's Witnesses continue playing the weird little drama video where these 2 kids are being persecuted for their religious beliefs. And instead of trying to make them feel better like a normal person, the mom starts quoting scripture to them. Anyways, it gets weird, so give it a watch if you're interested. Okay, thanks for watching, guys.